all phases of counter-terrorism. He survived a critical battlefield injury in the year 1998 to see the end of terrorism in Sri Lanka. Before assuming command of the army, General Jayasuriya served as the commander of the security forces in the Vanni, which was the largest theatre of operations during the humanitarian operations. He had been actively involved in planning as well as execution of humanitarian operations. General Jayasuriya is a graduate of the Defence Services Staff College, Wellington, India, and the National Defence University, Beijing, China. He has also followed many professional courses in India, Pakistan, and the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, Lieutenant General Jagat Jayasuriya, the commander of the Sri Lanka Army. Over to you, sir.
Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Professor G.L. Peris, Mr. Lalit Veeratunga, Secretary to His Excellency the President, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Secretary of Defense, Mr. Karunatilaka Amanugama, Secretary to the Ministry of External Affairs, Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and High Commissioners, Chief of Defense Staff of Sri Lanka, Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Commander of the Sri Lanka Air Force, Chief of Army Staff of the Senegal Army, past commanders of the tri-services, distinguished delegates, and invitees from across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. In domestic politics, as in international politics, the escalation of conflict into violent conflicts is rare. Some conflicts escalate to the point of widespread violence, whereas others fizzle out. The conflict in Sri Lanka is an example of former. The severity of internal violence is largely determined by the shift in power between the government and the opposition. This phenomenon relates to the rise and fall of insurgency in Sri Lanka. Based on work in world politics, violence will occur when relative parity between the government and the opposition exists. This equation was tilted in the favor of the government of Sri Lanka with the presidential election in 2005. Ever since, circumstantial events unfolding in a sequence of many battles and engagements, encompassed with counterintelligence operations, culminated in the world's greatest humanitarian rescue operation, resulting in the military defeat of the world's most ruthless terrorist organization, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, on 18th May 2009. The nature of contemporary conflict has posed new challenges to the approaches to protect civilians in conflict situations. Sri Lanka's experience relates in particular to the challenges we faced in protecting civilians in the context of an internal conflict, a challenge to the state itself involving a ruthless terrorist group, the LTT. In Sri Lanka, the LTT terrorist group made the Tamil civilian population a part of their military strategy. This brutal strategy was to create a situation involving civilian casualties by forcing civilians to be trained in weapons and take up arms, recruiting children for combat duty, holding thousands of civilians to form human shields, and holding them hostage and placing heavy weapons among civilians, attracting retaliatory fire. Victory for Sri Lanka came with many sacrifices. These sacrifices are indelible in the hearts of the people of our motherland. From these emerged lessons for statesmen, servicemen, intellectuals, administrators, sociologists, professionals, and the general public alike. They encompass the entire spectrum from warfighting to rehabilitation and reconstruction to reintegration. They are rooted in patriotism, professionalism, and respect for life. It is a saga to be shared with the world. It is our story of courage, valor, and glory, of comparison, humility, and joy, of peace, freedom, and democracy. Above all, it is the story of epic political resolve and the will to deliver a nation from the grip of terrorism, wherein strong political will and national support was key to victory. As we all know, the danger of terrorism has evolved, threatening humanity across the globe. It has transformed from coercion to terror with devastating effect. National security is no longer confined to borders, and sovereign states have been forced to look far beyond, as in the case of coalition of the willing in Iraq, NATO in Afghanistan, and more recently in Libya. It may certainly not end with the quest for strategic assets. Among this august gathering, we have those who are confronted or perceived with the threat of terrorism. We encourage you to take up the challenge with resolve and confidence. It has been our experience that there is nothing more formidable than a global alliance to rid the world of menace of terrorism in the pursuit of peace and freedom. This is underscored by the familiar volatility between successes and failures in the encountered terrorism hotspots worldwide. Today, as we approach another milestone in our successful drive against terrorism, we are honored by the presence of Honorable Minister of External Affairs, Professor G.L. Peris, Secretary of Defense, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Secretary to the President, Mr. Lalit Veeratunga, and Secretary to Ministry of External Affairs, Mr. Karunathila Gamunugama. On behalf of the Sri Lanka Ministry of Defense and the Sri Lanka Army, I welcome Dr. David Kilcullen, Dr. Ahmed Hashim, and Dr. Rohan Gunaratna, who will be sharing the expertise with us during specific sessions of the seminar as guest speakers. I extend a very warm welcome to all the ambassadors and high commissioners, members of the diplomatic corps, the Chief of Defense Staff of Sri Lanka, the Commander of the Sri Lanka Navy, Commander of the Sri Lanka Air Force, the Chief of Army Staff of the Senegal Army, the past commanders of the tri-services of Sri Lanka, distinguished delegates and invitees from Sri Lanka and abroad, our well-wishers, serving and retired officers of the tri-services and the media. I am pleased to have brought together eminent personalities from around the world with immense knowledge and expertise on terrorism and counter-terrorism, and senior military officers from 41 countries to engage in a frank and open debate alongside the Sri Lankan field commanders during the next 3 days. The Sri Lankan approach to counter-terrorism has been unique. It has been a paradigm shift from the traditional approach to counter-terrorism. Nevertheless, their linkage with the traditional approach, research and theory prevails. I am confident that the outcome of the interaction will be a source of inspiration to all in the long and arduous fight. Most importantly, I hope it will bring out the intricacies of dealing with humanitarian issues, which is sine qua non, and the complexities of fighting non-state actors within the obligations of Geneva Conventions, all of which we were able to overcome with much sacrifice. I wish all of you an academically enriching and a professionally rewarding experience. Honorable Minister, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me now introduce the keynote speaker of this seminar. As most of you have experienced, success in counterinsurgency does not come cut and dry. Rather, it emerges in the midst of persistence through frequent operational and strategic setbacks that obscure the imminent defeat of the insurgents and dent the resolve of the government to carry on with protracted war. This was no exception in the conflict in Sri Lanka too until 2005, when His Excellency the President of the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka, Honorable Mahinda Rajapaksa, decided to bring in an experienced former army officer of the Sri Lanka Army to lead the counterinsurgency campaign. His military acumen and the feel he had of the pulse of the security forces, as well as the psyche of the LTT, propelled him to bring about the politico-military gearing critical to mobilize national support for the campaign and sustain the will to persist the fight. His vision to restore peace and prosperity in our motherland inspired him to take up the challenge with courage and dedication. He is none other than the architect of the strategic masterpiece that knocked the daylights out of the LTT terrorists on 18 May 2009. He joined the Sri Lanka Army in 1971 and rose to command the 1st Gajaba Regiment in 1989. He engaged actively in combat, leading troops successfully during all major operations conducted in Sri Lanka, among which the Operation Trivida Balaya to liberate Jaffna Fort, Operation Liberation to liberate Vadamarachi in Jaffna, and Operation Balavege to liberate Elephant Pass stand out. He was decorated with the Ranavikram Padakkama and Ranashura Padakkama for gallantry. He also functioned in key staff appointments at Army headquarters, as well as formation headquarters and instructional appointments at the Army Training Center, Diyatalava, and the Kotalava Defense Academy, Ratmalana. He underwent military education and training successfully in India, Pakistan, and the United States of America, and graduated from the Army Command and Staff College in Wellington, in India in 1983. He retired from the regular force of the Sri Lanka Army in 1991 and took up the responsibility of spearheading the successful counterinsurgency campaign against the LTT terrorists at the Secretary Ministry of Defense in 2005. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to call upon Secretary Ministry of Defense, Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, to deliver the keynote address. Thank you.